Hello, my name is Paul Johnson. I'm a pre-sales technical consultant at Datalytyx, and today I'm going to walk you through our accounts payable solution. So a quick overview of today's demo. First we'll be creating a purchase order using our workflow and forms technology, K2 Black Pearl and Smart Forms. Then we'll be uploading a batch of invoices using our document capture technology, FSoft Smart Capture. Then we'll be handling ad hoc and electronic invoices using a Microsoft Office plugin from Knowledge Lake. Then we'll be enhancing SharePoint to easily retrieve those documents using Knowledge Lake imaging. So here we have our K2 Smart Form, and from this page we can see the current user's work list or all the tasks that have been assigned to that user. Now we'll look at work lists and how to interact with tasks in a moment, but first I'm going to raise a new purchase order by clicking on the new purchase order icon, and that will open up another smart form for me to fill in and submit. Now a smart form is made up of views which are reusable elements that can be implemented once and then reused multiple times throughout a process, and we'll see that shortly. So now I'm going to go ahead and get this form filled in and submitted. You can see the requester and the order date fields have already been pre-populated based on my Active Directory user and the system date. So for the description of this purchase order, I'm going to type in office supplies. A delivery date, I'm going to put a week from today. I'm going to choose Staples as our vendor. I'll set a priority, and then I'll look up a cost center. Now this picker control is actually hooked up into a line of business system that will give me access to all of our cost centers. So I'm going to choose EMEA Finance, and now I'm just going to add a couple of line items. The category and item controls are again hooked into our business database of categories and items. So when I click stationery, this item is filtered to only show products related to this category. So I'm going to choose to order some toner cartridges, and if I choose office equipment, you can see this has been filtered again. So I'm going to order some chairs for the office as well. So if I click save, that will update the total there for me, and you can see it's reflected in the header as well. So if I go ahead and submit this form now, we get a message that says your request for office supplies has been successfully submitted. So if I click OK, that will take me back to my work list page, and now I can see that a new task has come in, denoted by the icon next to the workflow to show that that's a new task. So once I have a task in the work list, there are various ways I can interact with that task. I can action it from the context menu, I can open the form and action it from within the form. I can even action it by email, and I'll show you that a bit further in the workflow. I'm also able to action multiple tasks at once using the multi-select and the context menu, and I'm also able to, by using this context menu, to redirect the task or set my out of office. Before we open this work item, I just want to show you what we call the view flow, which is a real-time business process map which allows us to see where we are in the workflow, who the participants are, and what the outcomes and the path that it's taken. So we can see here at the first approval stage, because this box is blue, everything that's green has happened, and if we'll see later on anything that's red hasn't happened. So if I drill down into this task, I can see who the participants are, and in this case it's just myself. Any activity data or events that are associated with that task are also displayed. And if I click on the charts tab, I can see for this particular workflow which activities have taken the most amount of time for me to quickly identify any bottlenecks. So now that we've had a look at the view flow, let's open up this form and take a look at the task. So as this is an approval step, typically a line manager or a member of the finance team might need to approve this purchase order before it can be raised. So at the top of the form we have some useful information that will enable them to make that decision. So we have the originator, where this process is started from, when it's due to end, where we're currently at, and the reference number as well. Over to the right we have some actions that we can perform which are related to this purchase order. For example, I might want to assign a task to another member of the team. So in this instance, I'm going to assign a task to Bob. I'm going to get Bob to just make sure that our line item prices are up to date. I'm going to make this a high priority and give them till Monday to do that. So I can start off a new independent workflow specifically for Bob, but mapped to this purchase order. I can also choose to send a message to another person in the organization, or perhaps externally as well. So first of all, I can choose whether I want to send an email or an SMS. In this case, I'm going to send an email. I'm going to send this to Erica. I'm just going to remind Erica that we've ordered some chairs and that the existing chairs need to be picked up. So once we have our message, we can send that and off it goes. Now, we may also have a conversation outside of the process that needs to be logged. So perhaps in this scenario, I might have had a conversation with the supplier, Staples, and I might have just phoned them to see if my items are in stock. So I can record that conversation against this purchase order as well. And then I might also want to update the priority of this as well. So I can now make it a low priority task, and that will update the KPI on the left. Now if I want to see the history of any conversations or messages I've sent, I can click on the history tab and they'll be available to review on the right here. Now the rest of the form is that reusable view we talked about earlier, which is pulled through the details of this purchase order so we can then review them. Once we're happy with those, we might choose to add a comment and then choose to either approve or decline. So I'm going to approve this purchase order, and now I'm back at my work list. I can see that this purchase order is now at the second stage of approval. So let's just have a look at this view flow again and see where we're at now. So we can see the first stage of approval is now green, and the blue box is now at the second stage of approval. That's because the total amount of the purchase order was above 5,000, so that's triggered off this second approval loop. And we can see that the paths that weren't taken have now turned red. So I mentioned earlier that we could interact with tasks through email as well, so I'll just show you that as well. Here I have the notification of a task. I can click on the link to open that item, or I can action it through the email itself. And it's just basically as simple as opening the email and a reply, type in the keyword, which is approved, and sending that off. So if we go back to our view flow, and we load this up again, because this is a real-time map, we should see when the server picks up that response, we should see this now turn green, and we should also get a notification email from the server to let us know that's happened. Now this process happens about once every 30 seconds. We poll an inbox, and then we send a response and update the workflow. So there is the notification to say that it's been detected, and as you can see, the workflow is now turned green. We've sent an approval email, and then we've saved some data in the back office as well. So that's basically all there is to it for our purchase order. The next step will be uploading some invoices with our document capture Effisoft. So I've prepared a batch of invoices for our document upload and extraction demo. I'm just going to show you these documents briefly before we scan them in using the web interface, so we've got an idea of what we're dealing with. We've got 7 invoices here in this batch. One is a multi-page PDF, the rest are TIFF images, one is rotated sideways, and so we can see how we handle that. I'll just quickly preview each document so we've got an idea of what they look like. You can see they're all very different in terms of layout, and this one here has a coffee stain on the front there, so we can see how we handle that as well. Now if I had a scanner connected today, then I would select the web scanner option from the menu, but as I don't, for the purpose of this demo, I'm just going to do a document upload. So all I need to do is grab my documents and just simply drag and drop them to the drop area, and that will start the upload. Once they're uploaded, I can start the batch, which will give me a notification in the top corner there to say this has been queued for processing. Once the batch has been uploaded, the OCR will be performed, and then I can review any batches that require further validation. To do that, I just select my batch list from the operator menu, click on the validation button, then I can see all my batches ready for validation. So I'm just going to select this top one, which should be my invoices. So here we are at the validation screen, where an operator would come and make any changes to the documents before they can be exported to your document management system. So if I just start off by explaining the layout of the screen. On the left hand side we can see all of our scanned documents. The ones that are in green mean they have been processed with a level of confidence so that the operator doesn't need to intervene, and the ones that are red, either we haven't been able to extract the required field, or if we have, it hasn't met our validation or confidence threshold. In the middle of the screen we have our document fields and metadata. The fields that are in grey are to indicate that those haven't been OCR'd but have come from a line of business system, and we do that through something called a fuzzy database lookup, which is where we take all of the content on the page and we find the most appropriate match. So for an example, the invoice shown on screen, our vendor name in the system is Hertz Rental Corporation, but on the invoice it's Hertz Equipment Rental. So we've been able to recognize that the company is Hertz and pull out the correct vendor name and the associated vendor number. Just let me show you an example of what I mean. So if I just put a wildcard in there, I can see all of our vendor names which are currently in the database. So here I can see we've got something called Miller Bakery. Now let's say I get an invoice from Miller Bakery and there's a typo and it actually comes out as Mile Bakery. We would still be able to recognize that the vendor we're actually looking for is Miller Bakery because we've done this fuzzy lookup. And over on the right hand side of the screen we have our document where I can perform some one-click instant OCR. I can also see where my document fields are mapped to on the page. So if I click on the invoice number text box, I can see that's highlighted in yellow over here and the date over here, so I can see where on the page these fields are coming from. And if I do want to perform some OCR, I just click in the text box that I want to, and then I single click on a word and that will transfer instantly over. Or if I want to do multiple words, I can just lasso an area and that will OCR as well. From this page I can also split and merge documents. For example, we have this double page document here. If I click on this icon up here, I can have an individual look at each page, and I just simply select the split and split fields and tables, and then if I go back to document list, we have two separate documents now. If I want to stitch those back together, I just select the merge and document 4, and then we've got them back together again. Another useful feature we can utilize is line item extraction. So using this Acme invoice as an example, I click on the table view and I can see that the line items have been OCR'd successfully. I'm just going to delete them so I can show you how we do that. We can do this by column or row extraction. In this example we're going to use the row extraction, and all we need to do is OCR the column headers like so. And simply click the start extraction, and then we can see instantly each line item has been picked up and OCR'd successfully. So now let's take a look at these two documents that are in red which require validation. Now this one you can actually see, because the icon's green, it's confident that all the fields have been OCR'd. The reason it's red is because we had to rotate that image, so it's just a visual check that's needed on this one. So we can click validate, that turns green, and then we move on to the next one. Here, actually if we hover over it, says the invoice number could not satisfy the pattern, and basically that means we've got a regular expression surrounding this field that prevents us from putting in the wrong format of data. And why that is useful to us is because if you notice, we have the coffee stain on the right, and if we try and OCR this, it comes across incorrectly. So we have to have a manual input. Now if I was to type the wrong number in here, and because we have manual input, we're still retaining that level of accuracy, so it's only allowing us to put the right format of number in there. Now you can see these invoices are different layouts, and with less advanced capture products, this type of OCR is done by setting up zonal templates. But this method requires the layout of documents to be fixed. Now the way FSoft Smart Capture works is we have something called key value extraction. This works by scanning the entire document for a particular word or phrase, which then becomes the key. Then we search the area around that key for a value, which is then validated against a regular expression. Now this gives us a lot of flexibility when dealing with documents from multiple suppliers. So now that I'm happy with my batch, I'm just going to validate this final document, and then what will happen then is that will be sent to the next module in the workflow, which in this case is an export module, which will then file these documents to my document management system, in this case SharePoint, and that will trigger a workflow, which we'll show you next. So now I'm back at my work list, and those documents that we uploaded into SharePoint has triggered a K2 workflow for a three-way matching process, and I'll show you that in a moment. But I did say we were going to look at ad hoc and electronic invoices, so for that we're going to use a Microsoft Office plugin from Knowledge Lake. So let's say I'm emailed an invoice from a supplier. We'll use our Staples example again. Now how do I get this invoice into my document repository? Well, once I've installed the plugin, I have this tab at the top of the ribbon called Knowledge Lake. If I click on this, and I then can use the Panel, Sites and Properties button. If I click on that, and then it expands the Knowledge Lake Connect panel to the right hand side. Now there's a couple of ways I can get my document into the repository here. So if I select on the options, I can choose to either index the message and the attachment separately, just the message, just the attachment, or the message with the attachment embedded. Probably the easiest way for me to do it is just to click on the attachment and just drag that over to the queue down here. Now once it's in the queue, it populates me the content type from SharePoint. I just need to fill in the required values. Now because I've hooked this up to my line of business system, rather than me having to manually type this in, which might cause errors, I can just type in the purchase order from the invoice, and that will pre-populate all the required data for me. Then I can just check that manually against the invoice. So is the date right, and is the amount right? So that looks good. So I can save that, and that will file that to SharePoint. And once it's done, I get a clickable link which will take me to the document, and then I can view this document within SharePoint. I'll also trigger a new workflow for me, so another three-way matching invoice, which we'll have a look at now. So if I go back to my work list, I can see that I have a new three-way matching workflow that's been triggered. So why don't we go and open that up, and then we're presented with a smart form. Now the purpose of this workflow is to match our invoice against a delivery note and a purchase order, which is a common process in the finance department. Well, that may not always be the case. There might not be a delivery note, or there might not be a purchase order for every invoice. But we can have a look, see which delivery notes are available, and then I can see at the bottom there, this matches our purchase order, and it's got our description as well. So I can click on that, and then I can open this document to see if it is in fact the one we want. So yeah, this is a Staples delivery note for our cartridges and office chairs, so I'm happy with that. So if I go back to my form and click on match delivery note, this is now turned green, And I can then do the same again for a purchase order. So here we got two slightly different purchase orders. So I'm going to open this one. Yeah, this is the one for toner cartridge and office chair, so I'm happy with that. So I'm going to match this purchase order as well. And then here I can have an overview of the key fields from each document. So I can check they're all right. Now here we can see the amount for this invoice differs from the purchase order. So the next stage in this workflow could perhaps be for someone to reconcile that. Now, if we have a look at the invoice, we can see we haven't accounted for sales tax, so that's where that discrepancy will be. So the next stage in this workflow could be for a member of the finance team to reconcile that on their accounts. So we can submit that to say that we've matched, and then that'll be off for approval. So now that we've got these documents into our repository and we've started a workflow, what happens if you want to find them at a later point? So for that we have a tool called Knowledge Lake Imaging, and that enhances SharePoint's native search. So we're going to have a look at that now. SharePoint native search allows us to search by keyword, and it will search everything it can: file names, content, folders, metadata, etc. So the results list can often be many pages long, and even when we choose to filter by a particular file type, it doesn't really make it a quick exercise to find that particular document we're looking for. So here we have the Knowledge Lake Search Center, and this allows us to have a very focused search, and we can set up and save our searches for later use, and we can have security trimming around that as well, so we can have save searches that only certain members of a department can see. And this makes it very useful to quickly go back and find, say, all of the invoices relating to a particular supplier for a particular month. So the first thing I'm going to do is scope this search. So I'm going to select my source. I'm going to choose just a finance SharePoint site. So if I run the search again, this will give me everything that's in my finance site. So I've got documents and folders as well. Now if I just want documents to show, I can filter by the is document property. And that will show me just the documents in this SharePoint site as well. Now if I want to select my results columns as well, so maybe I want to show the amount or a supplier. I'll run my search again, and I have this data now available to me as well. This is useful because I can then group a particular set of documents against a particular supplier. So if I drag the supplier name to the top column here, I can group all of my documents by supplier. So then I have all of documents for staples, invoices and delivery notes. And then if I was to drag the content type up there as well, I can filter that further, so I have all my delivery notes and all my invoices for a particular supplier as well. So this is really useful, so we can save these searches and then come back to them at any point in time as our library grows. It makes it just a really quick and easy way to find our documents again.